This is the first time I'm hearing this phrase on TikTok, but I could use context clues and understand what it is. So, funny story, I'm scrolling on TikTok, minding my own business, just getting lost in the videos, and a white woman pops up in my algorithm and it's titled Black Fatigue. And I'm like, this should be interesting. Now, this is a creator that I've really grown to respect their videos. Basically, in her video, she's calling out the Black community for different ignorant things that we do. And it's not just her. I've seen a lot of white people on this app kind of come out. It's almost like raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by Regina George type of videos. And that's what they're doing toward Black people. Here's the thing. The videos that I've personally seen is not racism. It's accountability. It's one of those to where they are tired. They are fed up to where they have opened their camera and they start confessing the things that agitate them about the Black community. And because we have gotten to that point, you know who I blame? The Black community. I mean, for one, the actions that they are mentioning is clearly from the Black community. Black people in the comment sections are just like, this is racism, this is this, and this is this. I blame y'all. This is what happens when the Black community cry wolf or cry racism in instances that's not racism, to where now we have a hard time knowing the difference between what is actually racism and what is actually accountability. Viva
What's good? What's good, my Souls of Thought family? As you can see, we are on the topic of Black fatigue. For those of you who are living under a rock, this is something that has been going viral all over social media. With that being said, I think it has some validity to it. And I was actually watching Jason Whitlock, and he had Anton Daniels and some more people on the panel. And I thought it was a very intriguing panel. So I wanted to actually review this with you guys, go over a little bit of it with you guys. So I thought it was super dope. So we're gonna get this on the screen so that we can talk about it. So let's see here. Also, if you made it this far, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Uh, Leave your comments. We're here for conversations. So we're going to get to it. I don't want to hold you up. We're going to dive right into it.
All right, let's get into this panel discussion about Black fatigue. Let me welcome Anton Daniels, Boyce Watkins, Shamika Michelle, and Virgil Walker. Anton, have you been on the show before? I can't remember. I think you have. I know everybody. Obviously, you have not?
I haven't. First time.
Oh, well, welcome and long overdue. So glad you're joining us. And so, Anton, since you're the rookie, I'm going to let you answer the first question and then everybody jump in. I will ask, because there's so many of us, that everyone try to not filibuster and, I'll pass the ball back to you often. Let's try to speak in 2 minutes, 90 seconds, 60-second sound bites, and you'll get the ball often. I said a bunch yesterday. I want to hear from you all. And so, Anton, I'll just start here. The whole concept of Black fatigue, is this a real concept, or is it just something that's happening, or is it just a social media hashtag?
No, it's something that's been bubbling up behind the scenes for an extended period of time now. And I don't even think it necessarily should be labeled Black fatigue. It's the easy way for us to categorize it. I think that it's more or less about N-word fatigue. And I don't know, I'm not going to go as incendiary as I would usually go on my own platform, but I think that it's N-word fatigue because all cultures don't necessarily deal with everybody within their culture and then categorize or become responsible for everything within the culture, right? When you look at Asian culture, or you travel overseas, or you go to Japan, or you go to some of these other places, there are entire cities that are designated for the outcasts or for the people that can't participate in society, and for them to hold themselves accountable and to truly be able to do things that is conducive for the group as a whole. But we are one of the very few cultures, especially here in the United States of America, where we find ourselves somehow, some way having to patronize Black businesses that's not necessarily anybody that we would rock with, or we find out later that somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do, or somehow we're not invited to the barbecue if we don't find ourselves wearing bonnets at the airport, or when somebody is loud, we can't be very matter of fact and direct and holding ourselves accountable. We celebrate the most degenerate of our society, whether it be our music or, you know, the things that we really champion and make famous on social media. And the minute that we then say that we want to have a difference of opinion, which diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that we champion within the Black community, even though it doesn't really benefit Black people as a whole, but it has benefited white women more than anybody else. Diversity of thought is only conducive if it's somebody that agrees with you, because if you, somebody like myself that is a conservative or a Republican, regardless of what your results are, married for over 20 years, successfully married, no children out of wedlock, never had an arrest, no problems, no trouble. But when you contribute into your economy and you stay home in Detroit, Michigan, and you do the thing that's right, somehow you get called a bootlicker or a coon. So, you know, what I've seen from people that don't look like us is that they are tired of acquiescing or acting like that there's not a real issue with Black people when we are some of the most racist people that we've seen on the face of this earth. And if you go into any Black household or living room, one of the first things that they're gonna tell a Black man is make sure you don't bring a white woman home. One of the first things that they're gonna say is make sure that you vote for Democrats, regardless of whether we are conservative in how we live our lives. So what white people are finally starting to do is get the courage to say, nah, we don't necessarily agree with you. And sometimes it comes out in some of the most incendiary ways, like the whole Shiloh situation. But now you're seeing an overcorrection from a long time of bad behavior from a lot of Black people.
Boyce, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to put a little twist on it. Is Black fatigue real, or is it just a social media hashtag? And if it is real, are white people justified for having it?
Is it real? I think that things are real if you want them to be real. You know, I know Black fatigue because I've experienced that. I have a type of Black fatigue that I still have to confront, but it's not from the things that are listed under the standard definition. From what I saw, Black fatigue is rooted in the feelings about systematic racism, microaggressions, you know, things that tend to be very.
So before he gets going and before we get the panel going, I want you guys to really pay attention to this video and to pay attention to this panel, because eventually it's all going to kind of evolve itself. But we have to start taking a step back as a Black community and understand that it's kind of sad that people even have to put Black in front of fatigue. It's kind of like putting Black in front of Black on Black crime, right? Like, it's things that we don't like to hear, but it's things that are very true. And it's very funny that they brought up this phrase, because anybody who knows me knows that I went through this. He's going to talk about not putting a phrase on it, but let's just say we're using Black fatigue because that's what the video and the panel is about. With that being said, I remember when I started reading books at the age of 25. I'm now 39. So 14 years of like finally diving myself into, you know, learning for myself, learning about the history, really looking up slavery, looking up civil rights, lifting up Jim Crow, just finding out for myself, really getting a deep understanding, learning about Rosa Parks and the people who even came before her. And then I remember every time I learned something, I was so excited that I wanted to give it to my people. Like, I wanted to educate my people because I learned something. And it became a point in time where it did become very discouraging, and you do become very fatigued because you're trying to convince people who are pretty much set in their ways. And it's because a lot of us aren't willing to change. And I understand that it can be hard to accept things, but you have to accept things before you can change things. It's just like an alcoholic going to AA, right? You have to first admit that you're an alcoholic before you can even move past the first step. And I think today, into today's society, us as African Americans have to understand that, yes, they may not be talking about you, they might not be talking about me, but the majority of our community are, like he said, out there in head bonnets, out there in at the airport with pillows. We do a lot of things that bring attention to us, and then we don't like the responses from other people. And every race has this party. Like every race has white people have trailer park people or white trash as they want to call it. They have rednecks. Mexicans have their people. Every culture has it. African Americans are just more known for it, right? Because we're all over social media. We'll make things go viral. We are the culture, which is crazy to me that we don't ever understand that. But we are the culture and we do push things forward. With that being said, I think black fatigue is a true thing because it's hard for people to not even get people to think the way you think, but to even agree to disagree. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to see it from their point of view. I haven't gone through the things that other black people have gone through that look like me. I haven't experienced racism in the manner that some others may have. Does that mean that it doesn't exist? No, I just haven't experienced it. But I also understand that when you put yourself in rooms that you are built to be in, you don't really experience a lot of things that other people experience. Sometimes you can feel a certain way because you're in the wrong room. And what I mean by that is you invited yourself and you didn't earn it. And that's what a lot of the DEI, all that stuff, but we're not going to get into that. We're past that. That's even why on my channel, I kind of faded away from the presidential stuff because people aren't going to see it from the positive point of view. People hate President Trump. Black people are going to continue to hate him. And there's no reason to try to make these people change their thoughts. So just wanted to chime in there and we're going to get back to the panel.
Political. Like I saw George Floyd get killed and it traumatized me because I could get killed by the police. I think that you can shape a term like that in the way that you want without and acknowledge the realities of being black without falling into these political traps. I don't trust a term like black fatigue because it comes laced with too many left-wing ideologies that are just these talking points that they use to get our votes every November for politicians that never earned those votes. So also the threat of black fatigue is that if you get too caught up in that definition and you define yourself by that, then you have labeled yourself a victim without actually also labeling yourself as a problem solver. So I can identify with a lot of those feelings. I can identify with the microaggressions. I can identify with maybe some issues in terms of dealing with cops and the racial disparities. I believe that they're very real, but I was also raised in a family that says, if you don't like your reality, you should be empowered to change it. And one of the ways that we harm our own people is when we are so determined to put people in a victim box that we remind them of their powerlessness. And in fact, I'll say this: if you give a child a wheelchair before he ever learns how to walk, then he'll never learn how to use his legs. And that's the issue. And this is why I think if you're going to talk about any form of disparity or any issues that we deal with being black, I think everybody on this panel knows that we're black, and we know that being black is different. It's a different kind of experience. But when we deal with that, it must be dealt in a way that's healthy. I don't feel that this is the healthiest way to approach these issues.
Boyce, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. I want to ask you a follow-up that's a little bit, I don't want to go too far away from the black fatigue, but you analogized yourself to some degree that you saw George Floyd die and you could see yourself dying in the same way. I don't believe that. I don't think that's a fair analogy. I don't think Boyce Watkins
if it sounded that way, that wasn't what I intended to say. Let's just be clear. George Floyd and I'm hearing you on that. I watched the detailed video of how Floyd was killed. Most black men would not die the same way. Remember, you're talking to the son of a police officer. I got best friends. I went to kindergarten, went to a cops. I've seen the range. I've seen the corrupt cops. I've seen the good cops. I've seen everything in between. And didn't mean to jump in and interrupt you on that, but I'll say that, no, when I saw the way George Floyd died, I wasn't happy with the way George Floyd was eulogized or sort of elevated into this symbolic figure that's supposed to represent black people compared to Martin Luther King and all these other silliness that they did. That was 100% political. So you are correct. And in fact, if you look at George Floyd's criminal history, I can never identify with a black man who will put a knife to a pregnant woman's stomach. I'm not going to align myself with that. So to your point, what I can identify with is that I've known men who were not terrible men, who made mistakes when they were young, who then spent 25 years in prison. and that was too much, right? So the disparities are real, but the George Floyd incident, not only was that an inaccurate portrayal of the experience of most Black men, but it also didn't accomplish anything. It just achieved just enough symbolism for the Democrats to get their votes. And that's the part that ends up offending me. So my apologies for interrupting you.
No, I talk. My voice isn't nearly as important today as hearing from you all. Virgil, you go ahead and chime in here on the questions I've asked for so far and any reaction to any of it.
No, I think you're spot on. One of the things that I agree with what Anton said, and I think it was really Chris Rock back in, I think it was 96 in his comedic sketch where he talked about you got Black folks and then you got the N-words. And the N-words are always the ones who mess things up for everybody else. You go to the barbecue, everybody's having a good time, and then the N-words show up and then they wreck everything for everybody. I think that's more of what you're seeing being displayed on social media. And what social media has done is it's really stripped away the veil of that reality. Chris Rock was talking about it in 1996, but what we're seeing now with the advent of social media is everybody now has a ticket to see the chaos at the picnic table, right? At the barbecue. They get a chance to see it firsthand, and they're sick and tired of it. It was Van Jones who coined the term white lash once Trump got elected. I think what we're seeing in social media is a black lash. It's actually blacks and whites who are getting sick and tired of every time they open up their social media app, seeing some breakout fight at a Target or something happening at a Carnival Cruise event where folks are arrested. You scroll your feed, and every time you see something chaotic like that, your immediate thought, whether you voice it out loud or not, is there go them, and followed by N-words, and you keep pressing on. I think it's real. I think it's a reality. I understand the desire to separate it from Black culture or Black people altogether, because not every Black person acts like that. Not every Black person is engaged in that kind of behavior. There are some of us who, the vast majority, who are dignified, and you're seeing because of, again, the proliferation of social media, you get a first-hand view, you get a front row seat to the actual chaos, and that's what actually gets clicks. But I also think, and I'll be brief here, I also think we as a culture, as a group of people who see these kinds of things, have to bring shame back. And have to bring shame back into the culture as something that's a course corrective for bad behavior in culture. We need to be the ones at the front line of saying that is ghetto, and we don't accept it, we don't agree with it, we don't believe it. That's not how we're wired. We need to do better. And we need not to be so frightened when others pick up on it. Whites, Hispanics, and other cultures pick up on that same kind of rhetoric, because it shouldn't be about you being able to act crazy because of the color of your skin. You should be called to acting rightly and acting in a socially cohesive manner with the rest of society.
Shamika, I want to ask you this, and you can respond to anything you've heard so far, but I get the Chris Rock bit, and I get the argument that, hey, there's Black people and there's ninjas, but it feels like Black people spend a lot of energy defending ninjas, and while still trying.
I like what he said there, because that is true. Because with that being said, that's what you see a lot of. When you see somebody like myself, Anton, Virgil, Jason Whitlock, we're called Uncle Toms, we're called Coons, we're called all these names because we are the people taking what we see and articulating what we feel is the problem. And if we don't feel the way that all Black people should feel, we are now excluded from our community. And I think Jason Whitlock hit that on the head.
And to distance themselves from them, but it's like there's a part of that ninja culture that we all want just enough in us. We want to know every rap song that denigrates us. We idolize every rapper that denigrates us. And so there seems to be an affinity and a natural instinct to defend ninjas at every turn. And that's how you end up with statues of George Floyd and this belief that, you know, he was just this harmless guy that got killed by Derek Chauvin. And so there seems to be a reluctance from Black people to distance themselves from ninjas?
I agree, Jason. I think that what it is there's still this idea that we don't want white people to know what's going on. So there's this, not necessarily defending it. I know it comes across that way, but don't tell anybody it exists. Let's not pretend like this is real. Shh, let's keep it quiet, because there's this idea that it'll make all of us look bad. I agree with Virgil when he says it's time to get back to shaming them. It's time to shame those, for me, in the grocery store, in their bonnets, in their pajama pants, in their being loud, in their not carrying themselves with dignity and class the way I'm used to my grandparents and great-grandparents carrying themselves. We have to start calling it out. But as you are well aware that when we do that, we're told we're coons, we're Uncle Toms, we have sold out. That's the idea. And every group of people has a lesser group. Like, we understand that white people have white trash. The thing is, though, they don't go around authenticating themselves according to the white trash. And that's what we do as Black people. If you don't have a certain amount of hood or degeneracy, or if you don't celebrate it in some way, they'll say you're not real. You're not keeping it real. You're not authentic. You're not a real Black person. And I think that's where the problem is because they actually try to use that to legitimize the rest of Black people. And that's really silly. I love the whole Chris Rock thing, and I'm glad Anton brought that in, because that's what I was thinking. There are Black people, and then there are N-words. And what social media has done is it's just brought the N-words to the forefront that everybody can see it. And now we have to stop lying and pretending like it's not a thing, because
social media brought it to the forefront because Black people are willing to sell their souls. Period. We feel like we are not thriving and we're just surviving, and anything that'll get me over the hump, I'm willing to do it.
it is a thing, and it's no longer, shh, don't tell anybody what's in our home. Everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Anton, I'm gonna circle back to you. You can respond to whatever you want to, but I do want to ask you this follow-up, and the rest of you guys marinate on it, because I'm gonna ask you as well. So if there's something you want to respond to, go ahead and do that tightly, and then respond to what is the root cause of the dysfunction that we see over social media and in our communities. What's the root cause?
Can you guys hear me well now? Can y'all hear me better?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, I think that the root cause is a destruction of our homes and a destruction of our families. When you couple that with feminism and the fact that we've even championed, and I'm gonna just be very, very frank, when we've put women at the forefront of who we are, which me, I'm scripturally based, I don't even believe women belong on the pulpit. I don't believe that, I hate when I hear people say that we need a partner instead of saying that I want a husband or I want a wife. When we've spent so much time pedestalizing, catering to, and trying to champion to a group of women that will sit there and throw in front of your face that they are the most educated, when in reality, they're the most enrolled and the most in debt, and they're the most affected by what we see happening on March 6th, or I'm sorry, May 6th, with them now getting garnished and their wages are being removed as a result of them being the most educated in curriculums that we don't even need in society. The minute that we started following them to the polls, the 92%, and we started acquiescing over to them and started telling them that they're the queens of the earth instead of holding them accountable for following white women into feminism, which hijacked the civil rights movement. And then at the same time, they went and got a bunch of gay best friends so that they can then have the alphabet community hijack that movement, and we start championing it, which the long-lasting legacy of our president, our former president, Barack Obama, is his champion in the alphabet community. The minute that we started following other people instead of holding down what was best for us in our households was the minute that we started to lose control of what happened, and we started to align ourselves with the Democratic plantation, which will sell us on the idea that we need a handout and that we need to keep it real for the culture. You've seen it in this previous election when Barack Obama sat there and tried to hold black men accountable for not following black women to the polls. And his very wife told the women that they need to ignore their husbands and make sure that they vote differently inside of the voting booth. So I believe personally that the minute that we started following women, the minute that we start allowing for them to take our children out of our households and single parent households, and then they use that in order to pedestalize themselves at their own demise, is literally the foundation of why we find ourselves in this situation today. Because I don't see a lot of black men, honestly, I don't see a lot of black men online complaining about students.
You don't see a lot of black men complaining about anything because black women will shut down anything that a black man complains about. Even though black men will root for black women and you get all these men who are pandering to women, when a black man complains about anything, he's shut down. You need to be more manly. You need to take accountability. It's your choice. You're the man of the house. You're supposed to pay 100% of everything. It's because black men have no voice, but then they want you to be emotional. They want you to do all these things, but you have to follow their rules.
I don't see a lot of black men finding themselves at a negative disposition and embarrassing themselves at the rate that I see women. Even though the narrative has been created that black men are having all of these children out of wedlock, the majority of black men take care of their children. The majority of black men take care of business. The majority of black men are participants in their children's lives. As a matter of fact, most black men aren't even really having sex like that. And so what you see now is a women-led society. All of the movies, they then followed suit. You've seen Tyler Perry's and Big Mama's House and all of this stuff. And they follow the plays, and now they all celebrating and they're promoting all of this homosexuality. The reality is that these are the things that are basically combining and then compounding the problems that you see happening in the community. And it's one thing that I disagree with the pastor on, is that I don't think that we need to just focus on shaming. I think that there needs to be a segment of us that divest ourselves and stop even having conversations with people that shouldn't even be in the room with us. I don't have to sit here and substantiate you. I don't have to hold you accountable. I'm gonna just walk away and I'm gonna let you deal with yourself.
As you see there, we all know Anton, especially if you follow my channel. I follow Anton's platforms. As he said there, I think that's the biggest thing we can do. And like I mentioned before, and it's way more to this. I'll probably do like a 2, 3, 4-part series of this. Was a 2-hour long conversation. Great panel, great people, different outlooks, different personalities, different thought processes, but they all got to a common ground. And I feel like that's the issue with our black society, is that it's hard to see 5 black people like this come to a common ground, but we don't get to see that often. And we need to see more of this. We need to see more of you can agree to disagree. And like you said, we don't need to shame people. We need to hold people accountable and just leave them alone. Because we all know right from wrong. So there's no need for me to continue to tell you what's right, what's wrong. There's no need to tell you that in the black community, we have nothing but selective outrage. I could tell you about 3 or 4 different cases that happened in the past week that nobody cared about outside of Carmelo Anthony. Nobody was outraged about the father whose son was killed in Cincinnati. You had a few people, but it was only here and there. You're not going to hear about this stuff because people only care about what they want to care about. And people got mad at me when I tried to compare the Carmelo and Metcalf to the Kyra Lacey death. Yeah, that man didn't have the support that Carmelo Anthony has. People weren't raising money for him. Why? Because we feel like he's in a better situation. And these are the things that we don't want to hear. And so when it comes to me and myself, that's why I told you guys I don't keep talking about politics anymore. Let the chips fall where they may. People are going to overlook the gas prices are going down. All they're going to say is, but he said this, he said that. Nobody's ever going to be happy that we're moving forward 10% or 5%. If you don't move 100% the way the black people want you to move, you're never going to win. So as Anton said it best, we don't need to shame them. Just leave them where they're at. Leave them for their own demise and let them do what they do, baby. But as I leave every video, God loves you, which is most importantly. I love you. You're beautiful, and your boy's out. Let go.